Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Akhila, yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was when I opened Teams, it asked me whether I want to switch to IIT Delhi version of Teams.
Okay.
So when I did that, I couldn't since yesterday. Like I told you, I could even when I unmuted and spoke, you couldn't hear me.
Okay.
But then I quit and I chose not to switch. So now unmute works, but still I can't get the message, the chat box.
Yeah, so we're still figuring out actually. So this seems to be everything is behaving differently. I don't know whether it's a issue with the systems. So because we are finding that some people are able to, because all of them are on the same status, guest status, except a few who have a regular IT Delhi domain address. All the others are anyway guests, but some guests are able to do everything. Some guests are not able to do the chat. But are you able to switch on your video and of course audio? We are listening to you.
Let
Can
me.
you just switch on? Video works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you
So
see me?
yeah, video is working. Okay. So but the chat is not working.
Yeah, I
So
don't know if it's because we have a niche a Microsoft 360 account. Is it Office 360? And is it because of such differences?
uh, okay. So what?
Think
Let's do one thing. Let's do some debugging. So what I would suggest is, uh, I will put another sheet, and then please those who are not able to do the chat, they can also write there the configuration that they are using. Okay, so I will put a few information and let us see whether I would request that those who are also able to use it should also put in the configuration, so we can see that at the end of
Sir,
it some analysis.
sir, I was facing this problem for first two lectures,
Okay.
but now I have started logging in with the um, like I shared my raise lines mail ID with you.
Yeah.
So, but when I was logging in, I was not using that email ID. So I
Okay.
had to create a new account on Teams, a Microsoft account with that email ID. And once I did that, after that, at the time of logging in, it gives me a small option at the bottom of that pop-up window, log me in. Then I log in with that login ID and password, and then everything gets enabled.
The chat is also enabled for you.
Yes.
Okay.
So that
So
could be way
no, but
workaround.
this is also not clear because that could be one reason. But like Volker has a Teams address from his department, and we have now shared that address. But for him, that also because the Teams should recognize that address. But
Hmm.
I'm not sure whether. So that we have to. So anyway, Akila, can you try this? What Piyush is suggesting?
Uh, I gave my niche address only to you, and I'm using the same address. Niche has given me an Office 360 account for the same email address,
No,
and
but it is not a Teams one. It is for the Office 360.
it this comes under that, right?
There, yeah. So the Microsoft is only acquired in some sense Teams, but
Okay.
you can try once more creating a Teams email and see that
Let me
whether
check.
it works or not.
Yeah, I'll leave and I'll check. Let me.
Register a
Yeah,
Teams.
or maybe if you have general email ID now, with that create a Microsoft ID and then share it with sir. Uh,
Maybe
so
keep it
that can.
separate from
Hmm,
Mr. ID. I'll try that.
hmm.
So who else is not able to get chat? So Akila is not getting. Volker is not getting. Who else is not getting chat? Anyone else?
Yes, sir. I am also not able to see my chat option.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're also not able to get.
No,
Okay.
no. I have given you my Microsoft Office account only, and using that only, I log in Teams and take classes online. But here, I'm not able to see the chat box option.
Okay. So Okay, people who have raised their hands, these are the people who are not able to get their chat boxes.
Shall I raise my hand as well? Yes.
No, we know.
Can't get it either, I'm afraid.
No, raise their hands on this. Okay. Oh, it's increasing now. Neha, you are also not getting chat box?
No, sir, I'm getting.
Okay.
I was just checking my net connection.
Let me try to see what is common between all these names. So that's an interesting situation.
Who can access chat? So maybe we can post the URL of the slides again.
I can access them.
So
I can also access.
right, not Neil Akash. Yes, that's good. So the URL on the GitHub, which is this, and hopefully people should then be able to get to the examples, which should be here. Let me have a look. Yes. So I've put a zip file of the examples onto the GitHub for the math example, as well as I've got one example for a Word document, because we had that discussion yesterday about whether to save things from Word or whether to generate or convert it with Pandoc. Now I've tried the saving from Word today. I didn't really get good results. But maybe somebody else who's a bit more Word literate than I am might get better results.
So, Volker, do you want me to post the math example link on the chat box?
Yes, I think that would be the easiest, so people can download that straight away. Don't have to kind of walk through the slides first.
Okay.
Thank you, Nia. Now, we tried it with breakout rooms yesterday. They didn't really work all that well, I have to admit, because we had a problem that I couldn't really just switch from room to room. So what I would suggest is for today, let's just I encourage all of you to just play along with what we're doing. But I will do things here on my machine, kind of play through the examples, and then maybe we can do some of the observations we can make together, and then see how, you know, in particular what's wrong with the output and so on and so forth. And maybe you can also tell me when you play along what you see when you're running the examples. Or alternatively, I mean, I can always go for somebody else who wants to maybe. Would anybody like to share their screen instead?
I can share one.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but who was that? Sorry, I didn't.
I can try.
Absolutely, I'm always happier if somebody else does it than me. I mean, I've done it 100 times in my life, so I don't have to do it yet again.
I might be a little slow.
Very good, very good. Right. So what are we going to do first? We download the example.
Do I unzip it? I think I've shared the window instead of the whole screen. Maybe I'll change that.
Ooh, I can see myself. That's always scary.
How do I? the example here.
Okay. Can you show us your command line? Brilliant. Exactly. So right. So what you can see here is the example consists of one LaTeX file, and the README just contains the source. So it's a source I've taken from the archive. It contains four graphics element and one bibliography. So that's primarily what we're going to play with. If you now go into the example directory.
Let's download. Yeah, I'm in that directory. Should I go into the folder too?
Yes, please. So you have to be in the math examples folder.
Yeah.
All right. So if you now would run the pandoc the pandoc command, exactly that one.
Oops.
Right. Brilliant. So it ran. What can we see?
It could not convert the maths.
It doesn't like converting the mathematics. Right. Let's have a look at what happened to the document in the browser. That's the one. Yes. Right. So there's the document. It looks like a LaTeX paper, but all the math is not converted, right? It's not entirely true. There's some math that's converted. So you can see the product up there, for instance, that has been converted, but the rest of the mathematics hasn't really been converted. Right, so some of it is there, some of it looks ugly. Yeah, all of it looks ugly. If it's not converted, it looks ugly. If it's converted, it doesn't look nice either. At least there's the figures in there. What else can we observe? Can you hover over one of these links there? If there are links, the equation. So where does that lead us to?
It's not leading anywhere.
Yeah, so the cross-referencing doesn't really work. Okay, now these are problems we want to work on. Let's have. Do you have a Tech4HT as well installed?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, let's work just with Pandoc for the time being. That's fine. Okay, what is the main problem for us right now? Well, the main problem is the mathematics. The mathematics is ugly and it's not being properly converted. The reason for this is that Pandoc doesn't have a mathematics converter itself. So it tries to go, if it finds a simple expression, which it can do with these, with just sub and superscript elements, simple sub and superscript elements, what I've showed you earlier on that web page, where on the one where everything was in HTML but ugly, then it tries to convert the mathematics. If things are more complex, it doesn't really know what to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give Pandoc a means how to render mathematics. And that is by just adding the name of the renderer, and the name of the renderer is MathJax in our case. If you run the same command again in the shell.
Do you want me to copy it again?
Yes. If you just, yes. Let's add something to it, right?
Oh,
Don't run it, just copy it.
If you just do your little arrow up, and we'll come back to the last line. Now, if you just add space minus MathJax.
MathJax.
Jax. JAX. There you go. Oh, nothing happened. Well, something happened, hopefully, but no warnings. That looks good. Now, let's have a look at the document again.
Wow.
It's magic. The math is there. Now, what happened? I can tell you what happened. All that happened is that Pandoc included a math renderer into the rendition of the page. So it just added effectively one or well, possibly two lines which tell the web page where to find the way how to render the math. And in that case, it's the MathJax engine, and MathJax just is being downloaded from the web, and it's just sitting there and does the rendering. And yes, and all the formulas are there, and all the formulas look quite nice. Right? And if you zoom in and out, for instance, you can see that's the graphics. That's independent. But if you just zoom, if you just do what is it exactly? The math zooms well, fairly well. Takes a while to display, in particular over Teams, but it all zooms. There's a minor disconnect on the rating symbol, but otherwise it looks as expected, as you would expect it to render.
But this link doesn't work yet.
Oh, the link doesn't work yet. No, that's one of the things that we will have to work on over the next lectures.
Okay.
Right. So. All right, so that's Pandoc. That's the conversion with Pandoc. Let's try that conversion with maths with Make for HD or Tech for HD. Does anybody else want to do that?
Yeah, I have installed it, so I can try it.
Yes, please. So we'll do the same with Make for HD, and we'll do the same observations. What works, what doesn't work, what's ugly.
So for that, I have to...
Let's do it without MathJax first.
Okay.
Just to see what happens.
So MathJax, I have Pandoc and MathJax?
No, let's do Make for HT.
Okay. So again, I have to do it directly through the command prompt. Huh?
Yes.
You should first do it without MathJax. Then
without MathJax, yes, please. So I think I've explained last time already, it takes a while longer than Pandoc to convert, simply because Make for HD goes through the entire LaTeX pipeline. It tries to resolve certain elements, particular macros, and can we, is that, that takes really long. Are we sure it's running? Are you sure that works? Have you tried it before? Oh, there it is. No, it's not there.
No, I haven't tried it. I just installed MikTeX distribution today.
So I'm not sure. Right, it might be creating fonts if you have not run it before, so that can take forever. Maybe. All right. Maybe I should try to take over at this point because I know that on my machine at least
it has come back. It has come back.
Is it done? All right. Brilliant.
Yeah, there is some
saying start.
Yes. Okay. So this can take a considerable time. So let's in the interest of time and of that lecture, let's not go through that. Let me share my screen instead.
Let it keep on running, Piyush. We can.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Can I share my screen? Right. So here's the example. make for HT. Right. So this is normally how it would look like. So it starts the conversion. It looks up fonts and whatnot. And now it should be done soon. Unless I've promised too much. Right, so there it is. Let's have a look how that looks like. Okay, so here it is. Can you see the entire text? And what you can see is, first of all, as opposed to what we saw in Pandoc, it does not try to maintain the original layout of the page. Instead, what it allows you to do, it allows you automatically to reflow the page. So we said previously that this is pretty much what we would like to have. We do not want to replicate the print layout. We want to have something that reflows on every device. What about the math? The math looks all right-ish, but when you zoom in, you can realize these are not really math elements. Some of them are, but some of them are images. So it's broken up. The math formulas are broken up into things that it can render, albeit not particularly nicely, right? That's this stuff. And then some of these formulas are images. And that's exactly what took so long. If we have a look at what happened in the directory here, let me make that a bit larger. What you can see here now, there's all these images that have been created, all kinds of bitmap images. And what that is effectively is running LaTeX on partial formulas and converting it via PDF into a bitmap image, and then including that into the page. And of course, that is not necessarily what we want. That was the example I've showed you earlier from Wolfram's Math World, where these images were in the page. The quadratic formula is an image, which makes it rather ugly.
Can you repeat this part, the last part? How did it include?
What it includes?
I'm sorry.
I'm hearing a lot of white noise. Somebody could everybody please mute?
Now, can you just repeat what it was doing? Like
now I can hear you. Yes. Oh, what it was doing. So what it was doing was so it's running the LaTeX engine on all these sub formulas, right? So when we have a look at what's in the page, we see that some of these parts here, I can highlight that product sign, for instance. I can highlight the sub and superscript here, but then I get an image, right? So what it does is it breaks up the formulas in things it can render in HTML and things it can't. And the things that cannot render in HTML, it runs through the LaTeX engine, gets a DVI or a PDF out, and then converts that into a bitmap image. And the result, excuse me?
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
And the result are all these little PNG files, right? So these are, it broke the whole thing up into 116 different partial formulas, which it now pulls into the page. And as we said earlier, this is exactly what we don't want. That was the example we've seen on Math World. This is ugly. This is not what we want. Even the things that are rendered, if you have a look at this one, for instance, p equals 2 pi over the absolute value of arg1 minus e to the c naught. That's just ugly. I mean, this doesn't look nice, right? So again, let's use MathJax to render the whole thing, and that's even easier with. That's even easier with Make4HT. All we tell it is MathJax as renderer. It does the conversion. It should be a bit faster, I hope. Still takes a little while. No, now we're done. now we re-render. You can see that initially it was very fast, of course, but initially you could see that the LaTeX was still in the page, and now it's being rendered with math checks. The way you can check whether you have math checks in the background is generally by just going in there and see if you right click and you get a context menu. And generally that gives you a good idea that this is math checks, and it tells you this is math checks and tells you which version it's using, and that in that case is even the latest, and so we're in pretty good shape. And again, all this is now in math checks and renders nicely, and we can zoom in all directions. Other things that we can observe as opposed to what we had in the rendering of with Pandoc is, for instance, we get some of these links actually come out all right. So let's have a look at, for instance, the link here, figure 1 link that actually gets us to figure 1. Here's a couple of question marks. So cross-referencing doesn't seem to work properly. That seems to work. This even gets us to the right place in the references. So the whole thing is already in pretty good shape. There's obviously still things that need to be sorted out at some point, but it's.
So this cross-referencing issue is similar to this forward referencing, backward referencing, like you run it twice and it will get resolved.
No, unfortunately not. We can run it again, but unfortunately it won't help. So this is what's
okay.
So this is something you have to look up in code and then start fixing, because I don't even know what that simple is, right? So this comes out as question mark, and the problem is that this might be an equation reference or some AMS style reference which is not being resolved properly, right? And we've ran it a second time. Do we get anything else here? No. Right. So there's a number of these things that we can start looking at in more detail over the course of the next lecture. Right. So what else do we want to look at right now? Right. So the first thing is, if we've used Pandoc, and for those of you who have used Pandoc, let me just rerun that here. Pandoc Rademacher on let me just do this, and so if we now go to the other, so this now is the, so this is the Pandoc generated element. As I said, this is not necessarily what we want, because this will display in a similar layout style as the paper. It doesn't display quite as nicely because it doesn't do any right flushing of the content as normal LaTeX would do, but at least it keeps the line formatting very similar to what you have in a normal paper. And the problem is, of course, that if we zoom in on this thing, there is no reflow. We have to start panning at some point. There's some reflow when it gets very large, but there's no real reflow if we go to smaller form factor size or zoom in or out. So what are we going to do about that? Well, there's various ways how to do this. The easiest is if you just start removing the parts which are not good for your reflow, right? And the way you do this is, and I'll show that to you. And by all means, you can always play along if you like. Is that we have a quick look at what the code of the page actually looks like. And I'll do that in an ASCII editor. So that's an important part. Do this in an ASCII editor. Never ever you open these things somewhere in, say, a Word editor. Word does its own formatting, and therefore will eventually destroy the document as you have it. Right, let's just have a quick look. It's quite ugly how the actual format looks like. It's automatically generated, of course, but you can see that it's basic HTML, and there's a lot of mathematics in there as in pure LaTeX. Now, what we want to do, we want to get rid of the layout. Right? So for those of you who are familiar with CSS, layouting is quite often done with padding and with giving explicit margins, etc., and particular height and so on. So I've put it on the slides, the bits which we actually have to remove, so I don't have to find it again. What are the things we have to remove, right? So we have to remove, first of all, the maximum width. That's easy to do. Let me do that. Oops. Where is it? All right. Nope, that's not what we want. That's what we want. Let's remove the maximum width of the body, and let's see what happens in the actual page. There it is. Right. Okay, fine. At least we're using the entire space of what we have. You can still see there's a lot of nasty things which you might not necessarily want. There's a lot of side padding, etc. We can remove that as well. Let's get rid of this browser for the time being. Let's have a look at how we can do that. Again, it's on the slides, so we can remove padding left and padding right. Let's do that as well. Those are those two lines. We can also remove padding top and padding top bottom if we like, and then we can just see, okay, rerun the whole thing, and now we go from either side, from side to side, right? Not necessarily as nice as before, so you might want to keep at least some padding. But this is just, now we're pretty much at the same stage as we were when we started with the make for HT command, right? So if you don't have the full LaTeX setup, Pandoc alone will give you a very similar output, and you might have to do a bit of editing afterwards, right? Where are my slides? My slides are gone. Here they are. Right. Here they are. So we've just removed the padding. Now, I've said we have a Word example as well available, which I would like to just briefly play for you. And then what else do we want to do? Then I want to quickly have a look at what MathJax is. Now, the Word example, I remember, who was it last time we've discussed about Word? Piyush, was that you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So what I want you to do, because I'm not very good at that, what I want you to do while I go through some of the other things, can you just download that example and save it from HTML? Save it from Word into HTML.
Sure.
And just to have and in the meantime, let me just, I don't think I have to download it. I think I have it somewhere here. In the meantime, I do the same example, I'll do the same example with Pandoc, which is just Pandoc Word docx standalone. Output is going to be, I suppose, word.html.
Which example you are using?
So the example is available from the website. It's here, download. It's just word.docx called. And it's an example which has been put together by my colleague Peter Krautsberger at some point. And let's just have a look how it comes across when we run it with Pandoc and MathJax, of course. Brave browser. Word.html. Right, so we've got the same layout problems, but the math looks quite all right.
This example is
Word.docx.
Yes, Piyush, if you could, if you could do the thing with and save it from Word directly as HTML, then we share your screen towards the end of the lecture just to show the difference, what you get with Pandoc and what you might get with saving from Word. Because I remember last time we discussed that issue and kind of concluded that it's never really a good idea to save directly from Word, simply because it puts in a lot of clutter and unnecessary things, and particularly when it comes to math, I think the output is not particularly good. But as I said, you might be better.
So this is run with MathJax or without MathJax?
This is now run with MathJax. So again, here's MathJax in the background.
Okay.
So if you run that without MathJax, not sure what we get, but we can try that. Let's run it without MathJax. Obviously, we get a lot of cannot convert some of the math. All right, so you get, so this is the Word document as with that was that, yeah, without the MathJax. So as you can see, the original input of the mathematics was either in Word or via Markdown was LaTeX, and that still is retained as the same, which is good, because then you can make it accessible as MathJax. All right, right. But now we've discussed a lot already how to, we've already used MathJax. Now I tell you a bit what MathJax really is. So in order to dispel the magic in the background, what is MathJax? First of all, it's a JavaScript library that you just use for rendering mathematics. And as you could see in our examples, it renders particularly LaTeX, but it also renders MathML or ASCII math. And the browser, the output it generates runs in every browser. So it generates output primarily in HTML with CSS styling, but it also can generate SVG output, so diagrammatic graphic output. So what I've showed you earlier with the Wikipedia pages, for instance, that's pre-rendered mathematics as SVG, and it's pre-rendered with MathJax. So the Wikipedia does it on their servers. That means that the pages load a lot faster, of course. It's not necessarily always perfect, therefore, because it cannot dynamically adapt to fonts in the page, but it generally does the trick. It's certainly prettier than having it as images or as pure HTML. It's important to note that MathJax is not MathML. It can use MathML, but it goes a lot further, and MathML is a fairly restrictive declarative language. And as we've said earlier, declarative languages are not necessarily good in order to convey meaning for STEM subjects. Right. So for those, so one of the things.
Akhila had a question. So she says, yes. She asked, Wikipedia runs MathJax?
That depends. Wikipedia runs MathJax in the background in order to, or not in the background, so on their servers in order to generate the pages. So if you go to Wikipedia page, let's just go to Wikipedia, say quadratic. Let's go to the quadratic equation. Oops. Let's zoom out a bit. Here, this equation, yeah, this is an SVG, and that SVG is originally generated with MathJax. So if we actually inspect that element, then you can have a look at it, and it is the SVG that's in there. That's the MathML, and the SVG here.
We lost your screen.
Oh yes, of course, because you can't see my inspector, right? That's a bit. Sorry. Can you?
No, we can't.
Yeah, I've had that problem before. Anyway, so you just have to take my word for it that the SVG in there is generated with MathJax. And however, MathJax itself is not in the page. Okay. So that means that it's being loaded straight into the browser, and it can be rendered without having to client side render the expressions, which makes it a lot faster. On the other hand, the disadvantage is that some of the advanced features we have available in math checks, which will be accessibility features, which we'll be discussing at the beginning of the next lecture, are not available at all in the Wikipedia page.
But the zooming will be supported through SVG.
Yes, yes. Zooming is supported through SVG. Since Wikipedia comes with its own fonts, that's good as well, because that means that it will look good. It doesn't have to adapt itself to the font on the surrounding in the surrounding text. But it's not always, as you can see here, for instance, it's not always fully perfect in terms of sizing. So the baseline here is slightly different than the baseline of the text, and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of little issues, but that, you know, your average user will not even see those. So nothing.
If I try to edit a Wikipedia page, then who? I mean, is there somebody in the background who is generating these MacJax generated formulas?
Yes. So what you do is in Wikipedia. So Wikipedia, there's all kinds of editing guidelines, and there's different ways how to include mathematics. But in general, you can just put it in as display mathematics or display equations in LaTeX, and then they will be rendered automatically. So it's a bit like in many other web pages, say, you might know Stack Overflow, for instance. In Stack Overflow, the math is or the math check is sitting in the page. You just type your question or your answer, including the mathematics, and the mathematics will be rendered automatically. In Wikipedia, since these Wikipedia pages are statically generated, it will be done on a server, and the server will generate the SVG, and that comes into the page. I think their system is called Mathoid or something that does all this. Right. I'm now mindful of the time already. I wanted to go through with you how you can actually include and adapt math checks for a particular example. I think this is something we might want to start next week with. Next week. When is the next lecture? Friday. Friday. Next Friday. Friday in our lecture at where I'll just tell you briefly how you can include math checks in any web page if you like, and how it's being configured, in particular if you need to add macros and how that can be done. Maybe let me just see whether our word example or word experiment, how that worked out. Piyush, would you like to share? Let's see how your example worked out. Piyush, hello?
Yes, shared it.
Sorry, sir. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I'm just somehow I can't hear anything.
Yeah, it's mute. So last example also has worked, sir. So it is now complete.
Okay.
Make 4SD. So it took time 7-8 minutes, and then it worked for the first time.
Yes, because as we've seen, it's created all the fonts and things which it only does once. So next time it should be a lot faster.
Okay. And this is the I say this as MHT.
Oh, yes, I had the same effect. So what is MHTML? For those of you who don't know what MHT is, it is a Microsoft proprietary container format for HTML components of a page. So an entire page, with all the images and all these things are being archived into a single format. Can you open that into a browser? It should work in Internet. So how does that look like? Looks like the Word document, yes. And how can we have a look at the math? Well, the math is, as we would have expected, it's images, right? Can you just pick one up with the mouse pointer and twirl if you can see that? Or is it not images? What is that? It's not pretty, but it might be something other than images.
I think so. It's getting opened up in Internet Explorer. That's why I'm not familiar with the options, various options.
Yes.
It's not allowing me to open it in Firefox or Chrome.
It's not allowing?
Yeah, I think in Chrome you can open it, but there's a trick. You have to download it first and then double click on the download or something, and then it opens it in Chrome.
Okay.
Of course, by looking at it, it looks like bitmaps.
Yes, it does look like bitmaps.
Because it's not sharp enough.
Right. It's a pixelated form.
So in Firefox, I think for MHT you need an extension, which is obviously not available.
But
right
Chrome
now.
you try, Piyush.
Sir, Chrome, it's not showing me the options. When I'm saying other apps, though Chrome is installed on my system, but it's not coming here. And okay, let me.
You can copy the URL and open in the Chrome.
Okay, so this is the first thing. I think this is one of the major take-home messages I want you to learn from this lecture. Never trust your operating system to do things right. Always, if you want to load something into your Chrome, just go to your Chrome and open it with it. Right? Don't trust the operating system to make the connections correctly. That's one thing, right? In Linux, that's particularly easy. You just do it on the command line and open it up with something. But you can always load a file in, say, also your Chrome browser by just open file and force it. Yes, that's not nice either, right? So all the text is clearly invalid. It's been crossed out. Right.
The source view source. Can you just do once Control U?
Control
U.
Okay, but as you can see, in many ways, what violated with this here, or what that demonstrates is, we violate one of the WCAG specifications, which says it has to be robust, and that means it should run on all environments that somebody wants to use, right? On all browsers, on all platforms, and so on and so forth. Quite honestly, I don't think that doesn't look like it. Look, there's raw HTML that can be seen. So that there's a \span up there I can see in the theorem, which generally means that there is incorrectly generated HTML. And I mean, we could look at the source, and it probably will be rather.
Okay, so
anyway, I'm mindful of the time. We're out of time.
Volker, we have a chat message from Jared, which says, I use LibreOffice. It saves us a .html and not .mhtml. It preserves the math formula. In my case, the text.
Can we see that?
Jared, can you
screen? Do we have? I mean, I'm mindful that our lecture's officially over, but I normally stay longer anyway. If you want to share that now, yes. Please. I'm very, very keen to see that. Otherwise, for those who have to leave, I'm sure there are lots. We'll start at this point next Friday, and then look at some of the issues that we've already identified, and then how we make things accessible with math checks, without math checks, and so on. Is that what you've got from LibreOffice?